Stephen Capra of Footloose Montana is the former executive director of New Mexico Wild and has worked to create 2 national monuments and 3 wilderness areas in New Mexico. He started the Mexican Wolf Coalition and has worked to end trapping in New Mexico. So please take it away, Stephen.
Great, thank you. And I'm speaking to you from an incredibly smoky Missoula, Montana today, I might add. The fires just don't stop burning in our neck of the woods, and that's really, really sad to see. I'd like to maybe approach this in a little different manner, if you don't mind. I've been involved in conservation for about 30 years, and I approach it more from a position of it's really important to win. And winning sometimes means that you're not always popular. And so I'm going to give you an example, and then I'm going to move forward to kind of give you a sense of what's happening here in Montana. When I worked to get the Organ Mountain Desert Peaks National Monument created in New Mexico, it was a 9.5-year process. And in that 9.5-year process, we worked with our senators. We worked with, well, we couldn't work with the congressman. He was a crazed anti-environmentalist in southern New Mexico, Steve Pierce. And he said, those monuments will be created over my dead body. And the key to success always is organizing. Organize, organize, organize. When you really organize, you usually will win. And through the process, I had to spend a lot of time talking with ranchers, and I'll be very frank with you. The conversations I had with ranchers they were suspicious from the start that we were going to put wolves on the land. I told them initially that, yes, I'd love to see wolves here, but that's certainly not going to happen anytime soon. For 5 years, I met with them constantly. I bucked hay, I drank, I rode horses with them. I had more conversations than you can imagine. And their response consistently was, go to hell. And their response consistently was, we're never going to work with you. And I think that that's something that people have to get in their mind a lot of times with the livestock community. They're not big on change. They're going to tell you a story consistently that everything is being destroyed. And what I came away with after 7 years of this process is I went to our senators and I said, I'll tell you what, we spent 7 years talking to ranchers, and we have said that we will get this legislation one way or another. And I said, they refuse to budge. They wouldn't even work with the senator on any part of the proposal. Constant visits. They said, no. So I went back to the senator and I said, I'll tell you what, we're going to scrap the legislation. We're going to triple the acreage, and we're going to go for a national monument through President Obama. And that's exactly what we did. And at the end of it, it was about beating them to make a change. And I think that's something that sometimes is hard in the new world of conservation to understand, but we had to do that. We weren't going to get their cooperation, and we defeated them. Not only did we defeat them, we tripled the acreage that was going to be protected. Now they're more willing to have a conversation about maybe if this happens again, we'd like to be a little more involved. I think that's very instructive as we work on the wolf issue. I think for a long time, there's been this endless effort to cooperate, and I think it hasn't paid dividends. And I think if you want to be realistic, and I don't want to sound like the voice of doom, what happens in Montana and Idaho will come to Colorado. You're just one Republican governor away from that inevitability. The game will change, and the ranchers have a lot of patience, and they're willing to wait. Have I had great conversations with ranchers? Absolutely. Have I respected them? Absolutely. But this isn't a situation when you're fighting for wildlife. You need to win. When you're trying to protect land, you need to win. And if you don't win, then wildlife loses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's been happening up here in Montana. I moved up here 3 years ago from New Mexico. And I kind of walked into a tsunami. I didn't really understand the politics that well. And, as we got rid of Donald Trump, which seemed like a bright moment for conservation, our state elected Greg Gianforte. And many of you will remember our governor. He beat up a reporter. He has done a number of things that alienate him from most of society. He believes the earth is 6,000 years old. He has a radical church that he has created, Bible school, etc. He wants to take women back to the Dark Ages, and he has been very aggressive when it comes to the wolf issue, and especially when it comes to trapping. Greg Gianforte is a trapper. And that's kind of a funny thing when you move to a state like Montana. You think, wow, I'm in the most beautiful place in the world here, and it's unbelievably beautiful. But we have a congressman, Matt Rosendale. He's a trapper. We have a number of people in our legislature that are trappers. And I should add, they're also white nationalists. We live in a very interesting time in the state of Montana because for 16 years, we had a legislature that was Republican, but we had Democratic governors. So there was always a balance. But this state went big for Donald Trump. And as a result, we got Gianforte, and we have a radical state legislature. As a result, wasting no time, this legislature got to work immediately. They've passed so many bad bills to wildlife that it's hard to comprehend. They've expanded trapping season by a month. They have put a bounty on wolves of $1,000. They have moved aggressively to expand trapping, allow snaring, night shooting of wolves. This is kind of the nightmare scenario when you have a Republican legislature and you have a Republican governor. I'm going to also balance this out. So I don't want people to think I'm just going to beat up Republicans, because we have a unique situation in this state. And I'd like to balance it by explaining to you that the whole reason wolves got delisted in this state was because of our Democratic senator, Jon Tester. Jon Tester went to President Obama and said, I'm not going to get reelected unless we delist wolves and they can be killed. And that's the truth. That's the reality. And so what did Obama do? They put it into a reconciliation bill. And for the first time, we delisted something like this. That delisting has led to the trouble we have today. And so we're an equal opportunity abuser here in Montana. And Jon Tester, who's good on the environment and has voted a lot of good things, and we generally support him, has a 0 rating when it comes to animals from Animal Humane of America. 0. Our Republican senator has an 8. And so that's the kind of thing we're dealing with up here. And I would have to say, and I don't want to sound conspiratory or anything like that, I think it's very important to understand that Republican governors in the West are kind of working in lockstep to try to go after wolves. And the reason is it's a culture issue. They want to create that cultural division. And that cultural division is playing out in a big way in our state. And I think that's something people really maybe don't see, or maybe you do see. But it's a really big and popular thing that the Republican governor wants to say, we need more trapping. We need to get rid of these wolves. Everything you're hearing about in Idaho is happening here in Montana, and we're fighting like hell. We run TV commercials blasting our governor. We write editorials on a regular basis. I have spent today, before I was here, meeting with people across the state talking about the fact that we've got to not let our foot off the gas pedal. And the other big problem with all of this is state wildlife agencies. Now, we can't correct everything overnight, but we have to have a sober conversation. State wildlife agencies are at the root of the problem we have with predators and wildlife in the West. These agencies were created at a time when wildlife was basically on the brink. And we had a lot of sportsmen's groups that came in. Then we had legislation like Pittman-Robertson, and then ultimately in 1960, Dingell-Johnson, which put an 11% surcharge on ammunition. That money was used, and then fishing equipment. And all of that money was used to help fund these state agencies. We've always had an influence of sportsmen overwhelming state agencies. There's a reason why when the people in Wisconsin are saying we don't want wolf killing, and then the agency says, oh, but by the way, we're going to up it 100%. They're playing to their constituency, which is sportsmen and especially trophy sportsmen. Here in our state, look no further than the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation funded directly the Foundation for Wildlife Management in Idaho. Foundation for Wildlife Management is the group that puts the bounties on wolves. That was funded by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And this year, our legislature welcomed them to Montana and said, we're not going to use any of your government funds to kill wolves with the bounty. We're going to allow that to happen with the Foundation for Wildlife Management. This is a group that has already been shown to be corrupt. They've already been double dipping. They're a nonprofit, and all the people involved in the group have been going out and killing wolves and getting the bounty money for themselves. This is a very sick situation that has to be remedied. And so I don't want to depress people. I want you to understand the reality of what's going on. We have special interest groups like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Safari Club, the NRA, that want wolves dead. Now, if they want them dead in Idaho, and they want them dead in Wyoming, and they want them dead in Montana, they will want them dead in Colorado. It is imperative that this gets stopped. We can't allow trapping to run wild in this state. And that's exactly what our governor's doing. We can't allow the killing of wolves. September 11th, they're going to start killing wolves up here with bow and arrows. I mean, it's amazing. There's nothing they haven't thought of in terms of trying to kill them up here. They want to kill 1,000 wolves this year. And I can assure you in 2 years, this same legislature is going to try to allow hound hunting of wolves. They just allowed hound hunting of bears. So we have this radicalized legislature that we're dealing with in Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. We have Republican governors. We, in our case, have a Democratic senator who helped delist the wolf. And he's getting a lot of mail. And I would encourage you to write it. But he's being very slow to react. And it makes me wonder this question. We are all waiting for the Secretary of Interior to relist these wolves. Is John Tester blocking that? Because if you're Joe Biden, do you really give a damn about Greg Gianforte? You didn't even bother to let him be on the call when they were talking about wildfires. Do you care about the Wyoming governor or the Idaho governor? Do you care about these Republican senators? I don't think so, because none of them support your agenda. And let's be frank, you're not going to win re-election out of these states. But you might care about John Tester. And you might be wondering what you can do to help him win a re-election. What we need to do with people like John Tester is make them understand you're more likely to be re-elected if you support wolves. We're having a meeting next week here with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Agency. There's been 25,000, and I apologize, I do have a dog. There's been 25,000 comments that have come in from Montanans saying, don't kill these wolves. And I will assure you that next week they will move to kill these wolves. The question will be, how radical do they go, or how moderate? Maybe they might say, well, no night shooting of wolves. Maybe they'll say, we need to think about this. In our state right now, they're going to have no setbacks in 2 counties for traps. That means you could be hiking on a trail and there could be a trap in the middle of the trail. This is the radicalization that's going on to appease rural voters who they seem to perceive want this, but I can assure you a lot of rural voters I've met with don't want this. And so that's part of what has to happen here is we've got to really work hard to win. We've got to stop what they're doing. And that means we need to call them out. We need to make them understand the situation that they are creating. And that's something that we've been working really hard at Footloose Montana to do, to be honest with our members, to communicate what we see, and not to sit here and try to placate an agency that really is out of control in our state. And I would just say to people, I see hope with wolves. I don't want to always make this sound so negative. I see a lot of hope, because what I've seen through educating people about the reality, by saying to them, you can't trust this agency and you need to really press this agency. People are starting to understand what's going on. And I use New Mexico as an example of that. You could go to game and fish meetings years ago in New Mexico, and there'd be 3 people there, and they would be hunters. And over time, as the wolf issue got intertwined in the state with the Mexican wolf, suddenly we had 50, 100, 150 people show up to these fish and wildlife meetings. And suddenly, the commissioners were being shouted down by people saying, we will not stand for this. That got the media involved. That also got politicians to listen. Far from being radical, we were considered to be people who really cared about wildlife. And you fast forward 5, 6, 7 years, and now New Mexico's eliminated trapping in the state. They've eliminated it because people came together and said, we will not stand for this anymore. And I think that what we're trying to build here in Montana is that same mentality. We're not going to accept it. And if the governor chooses to do it, how much political capital does he want to put on the line for that? And our guess is there's going to be a limit to that political capital. And I think that that's what we have to think about. We have to think about pressuring these people, making it clear to them that wolf killing is unacceptable. We have to push them to understand that these agencies are not working in the best interest of wildlife. And we need to begin the conversation about reform of these agencies. These agencies need to be about conserving wildlife, not destroying all predators. That's a vital point that needs to be put down with these agency representatives. And we have to be careful what we wish for when elections occur, because elections have consequences. I wasn't kidding when I said we have white nationalists in our legislature here. This is unbelievable in America. I can go here in Missoula, the most liberal town in our state, and there can be Proud Boys standing at protests. That is influencing what happens with wildlife as well. And we cannot stand for it. And I continue to say we need to think very strongly about what happens in Idaho and Montana will have a major effect of what could. I do believe the people of Colorado are different. I've lived there. I know people care about wildlife. But I've also seen what happens when you get specific legislators. Think about this. We have a legislator here, a white nationalist, Paul Fielder. This man introduced every bill we saw, every single one. This man has been on a mission to allow wildlife to be killed. And it is incredible what one person can do, and a governor who's willing to listen to him. And remember about our governor. Max the wolf was a Yellowstone wolf that he illegally killed. That wolf came out of Yellowstone in search of a mate. And we know that one of the most awful trappers in this state, who's part of the National Trappers Association, trapped that wolf. He kept it alive, maybe for several days. And the governor finally came and killed that wolf. That's our governor. In Montana today, you can pay an outfitter to trap a wolf for you. You can pay him $5,000. He'll call you up and you can come and shoot that wolf. That's a disgrace. And that's the kind of thing we're working to change up here. That's how far it can go. You create a cottage industry based on this reckless legislation. So I say to you, we have a lot of work to do. We have to be strong about it, and we have to be strong in our conviction. I've been working on this kind of stuff for a long time, and I feel incredibly strong that we've got to beat back people like this. We have to be realistic. I care about wolves. I care about wildlife, and I want to see them flourish in Montana, in Colorado, in Idaho. And we have got to stand up to these agencies and to representatives like this. And that means taking them on. It doesn't mean trying to work with them. They're not going to work with us. They have to be challenged. And when we put a TV commercial up, we're making it clear that this governor needs to be removed. And we're making it clear that we cannot take policies like this for wildlife. And I can assure you, I have gotten so many calls from people saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so if I can say anything else, I have a dog. I have two dogs. You heard one of them. And in a place like Montana, when you go hiking here, we have less than 1% of our population of traps. Think about this, less than half of 1%, but they control 99% of our public lands. There are traps in the waterways, there are traps on the land, and now this governor has expanded snaring. When I go out to walk my dogs, I have a wire cutter. I have zip ties to help me get, if something happens, they get a trap. And every year this happens constantly here. This is a sin. We are killing over 150,000 animals a year in traps in Montana, and that doesn't even count coyotes. This has got to be stopped. It has to end. But we put an initiative on the ballot here in Montana back in 2016. We were outspent 12-1 by the NRA, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Trappers Association, and we lost 12-1. They spent close to $1 million to keep trapping alive. And in case you think trappers are on snowshoes, wearing furs, and living this rugged lifestyle, let me sober you up. They're on four-wheelers, they're fat, and they love to kill. And we need to stop people like this. We need to take them out of circulation from doing what they're doing. So I hate to sound cynical. It's not meant to be cynical. It's meant to really educate you about the realities of what's going on and why it is so important that we're level and honest about the situation we face, and we really work together, all conservation groups, in unison to make a difference on these issues. We can't be shooting in different ways. We've got to really work under one umbrella with a very focused strategy of trying to end what is really the most shameful thing I think we have seen, and that's the killing of wolves and the trapping. May they live and flourish. We don't need to manage wildlife. We need to manage people. Thank you.